I don't like evil campaigns, and I don't like PvP. But this was fun. 8-Legged Entertainment sent me a copy of their Kickstarter product, The Widow's Web Trials of the Drow, and I took the opportunity to run the adventure. Or one of them. It comes with 3. Now, of those 3, I've only seen 2 of them, and they were still in the editing phases when I got my hands on them. Also, I only ran one of the 2, so I can't give you a full breakdown of everything, but I'm going to try to give a spoiler-free take on whether or not this is a fun adventure. It is. This light is awful. Okay, so what is this Kickstarter and what makes it exciting? First of all, the core product is 3 adventures. Each one is kind of billed as a one-shot scenario, but they run long enough time-wise that you could run them as a 2 or 3 shot and probably be okay. You'll get at least 3 sessions out of it, maybe more, depending on how long a typical session is for you and your group, which is pretty cool on its own. But for me, the real appeal is that this is a Drow-themed adventure. If it isn't obvious by all the books on my shelf, I tend to lean into Underdark settings, so getting to play through an adventure that is Drow-themed is pretty spot on for what I'm interested in. The other cool thing about this adventure is that it's kind of tournament style, where everybody's competing against one another to try to be the last Drow left. That's not really a take on a typical one-shot that I've seen done particularly well in the past, but now that I've played through this one, I can honestly say that they've done a great job. Now, as for running it, I'm not going to get into too many details because I don't want to spoil the contents of the modules, but I'll give you a real quick rundown of kind of what to expect. First of all the characters are 8th level. They all get completely maxed out hit points, so no keeping the average and no rolling. You just treat every die as if you rolled the max value. And each character gets very minimal equipment coming into the adventure. So even though you're 8th level, you're not statted out with crazy magic items. You can pick up a few along the way over the course of the adventure, which you can use immediately, but you're not coming into it with anything. This has some very real implications for what characters are going to be best for the scenario. A 2-weapon fighting build, for example, not going to work very well because you only get to bring 1 weapon. You can't bring 2 scimitars even if you want to, so you'll probably want to leave that Dritz to build at home. You also can't cast any spell or use any ability that brings an ally to you in the game. So familiars, summoning spells, animal companions, all that stuff is out too. As for the structure for the adventure, they all come with 8 encounters, or at least the 2 that I've read through. And most of the encounters are structured so that at least 1 character is going to die before the end. You also basically teleport from one encounter to the next, so there's no opportunity to recoup resources or anything. I mean, you can down a potion or something in between encounters maybe, but not take a short rest. Sorry, Warlocks. Now, the encounters are all set up to be competitive, so the person who performs the worst is not going to make it to the next encounter. And in this particular adventure, that means they literally didn't make it to the next encounter. And just like trying to escape an angry bear in the woods, you don't have to be the fastest in the group, you just have to not be the slowest. So taking the opportunity to trip up the guy next to you is a perfectly valid way of making sure you survive to advance. Come to think of it, it's actually kind of structured a lot like reality TV competitions.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
This adventure does have more mature content than what you would find in most D&D games. If you think of D&D adventures on a spectrum of How to Train Your Dragon on one end to Game of Thrones on the other end, with like Lord of the Rings being sort of a midpoint, The Widow's Web is about here. Granted, I've only seen 2 of the adventures, and those were still being edited when I read through them, so it might fluctuate some by the time they release the final product, but you get the idea. So what's my overall take on this product? Having run it myself, I can say that this is a really refreshing take on a one-shot, or maybe a 2-shot. I'd recommend that you run this with a really mature group of players, both because the content is a little more mature, but also because of the competitive nature of the game and the way the scenarios are set up. If you don't have mature players, you may run into some hurt feelings, folks not really managing the sabotaging of one another very well. The amount of infighting that this module encourages among players is very starkly different from what you typically have in a normal D&D session. And so I would, make sure the players know ahead of time that that's what they're getting into, which the module recommends. But also I would just, read the room and know your players. If it's not right for them, it's not right for them. I personally wouldn't enjoy running a campaign with this much like PvP and character death, but for a one-shot, It was a lot of fun. My players and I had a great time, and if it sounds like this is the right adventure for you, then by all means, run over to the Kickstarter and grab a copy. Or, I guess, pre-order a copy? Whatever, however that works. As of filming, they're sitting at just over $70,000 in support, and they funded within like an hour. So go check them out. Link in the description, obviously. Become a backer, and you too could be running a table where your players are betraying one another for the glory of the Spider Goddess.